for a special thank you to MIT, TCS and Forbes for hosting us here today. Teneo is the world's largest CEO advisory firm, and we're incredibly proud today to be partnering with Global Citizen on this historic initiative that we've been working on, you and I and our two companies and teams, since September, called Global Go Live. Our collective efforts will culminate on September 26th. Put that date in your diary, it's going to change your life forever. September 26th will be the largest broadcast cause event in the history of mankind, with at least 6 simultaneous concerts taking place at the same time across 5 continents. Together, we're building a coalition the likes of which the world has never seen before, to secure the $350 billion in commitments that Hugh has already mentioned. To achieve our goal, we're bringing together citizens of the world, world-renowned artists, companies from all over the world, government leaders, and philanthropists. This group will drive actions and push for companies, governments, and philanthropists to step up finally, once and for all, to help provide the commitments needed to achieve the global goals and end extreme poverty once and for all. I've been coming to Davos for many years. Many people talk about this, and many people try their best to help. But now is the time to make it happen. It's time for the talking to end. To get to the $350 billion needed annually to do this, this campaign will call on and call out governments, companies, philanthropists. Leaders in music and entertainment have already raised their hands to perform and support this campaign, many of whom are longtime partners of the organization. And we are thrilled that Priyanka, who is one of them, is with us here today. To date, the campaign has received support from several leading CEOs and senior executives from around the world, leaders of the largest companies in the world. Chuck Robbins of Cisco, who is here with us today and from whom you will hear in a moment. Hans Vestberg of Verizon, Ed Bastian of Delta Airlines, Alex Gorski of J&J, Vincent Roach of Analog Devices, Mark Pritchard of P&G, who you'll also hear from here later, Mindy Grossman of WWA Watchers, Randy Freer of Hulu, and several others. We're here in Davos as we want every company to become part of this campaign in some way. It's not as difficult as it sounds, so please listen. You can make a policy commitment in support of the global goals across one or more of the campaign focus areas, and there are 3 out of 17. Human capital, gender equality, or sustainability. You can make a sector commitment to join or develop a partnership of leaders across your sector to identify a joint commitment you can all make towards the goals. Or 3, you can simply raise awareness by engaging partners and supporters and suppliers and people in the campaign. To be clear, very important you understand this. This is not a telethon. This is not about raising money. This is not asking people for a financial commitment. This is about taking specific actions and making commitments that will be counted towards and recognized in support of that $350 billion goal. But instead of me talking, let me give you a flavor of what is to come in today's discussion. Please watch this video. Thank you all for listening, and please help us. We're going to change the world. Thank you.
I like and the opportunity to really better understand the extraordinary mission and partnerships and collaborations that you all are embarking on and that everyone in this room is embarking on. For this afternoon's panel, first panel, we'll be talking about that conversation of gender inclusivity. We have Hind Khatib Othman, the chair of the Water Supply and Sanitation Collaborative Council. Eddie Nadopu, global activist and humanitarian, an extraordinary story that we'll hear about in a little bit. And to my right, we have Mark Pritchard, who's the Chief Brand Officer for Procter & Gamble, one of the most powerful forces in the media and marketing community. Mark, I want to start with you because we've talked so much about the role of business to be able to drive catalytic conversations, and you all are co-chair of the Global Go Live, but you all have really made an effort to tackle not just issues of gender inequality, but race, immigration, really hot topics. Some people would say, a business can have values, but talk a little bit about why you go and have moved beyond to tackle what can be very tough conversations and how you think about in the context of Global Go Live, how businesses can better engage and more thoughtfully engage in these conversations.
Businesses have tremendous reach and they have the means to be able to make a difference. So when business can be a force for good and a force for growth, you can drive a sustainable program to be able to make the world a better place. So at our company, what we choose to do is focus on several of the areas you talked about. They're within the SDGs. Focus on gender equality, diversity and inclusion. We focus on environmental sustainability as well as health education and other activities that can help alleviate and extreme poverty. So when Global Citizen came along, that gave us a platform to be able to use our voice in a more extensive way, to be able to reach the citizens of the world who want to make these differences. We reach 5 billion people on the planet. Those citizens are consumers, but they want us to do good. 9 out of 10 people feel better about a brand if they're doing something for the environment or for sustainability. So we have an obligation to do that. Global Citizen has given us the opportunity to make huge commitments. We committed $200 million of clean water to be able to get up to 15 billion liters of clean water. That helps children, families, and women be able to thrive. We just recently made a commitment to add another $130 million to women-owned businesses. Only 1% of business is with women-owned businesses. We now spend $1.1 billion to do that. And then finally, we've worked with several other organizations to end poverty called period poverty. Believe it or not, 1 out of 10 young women miss school during their period because they can't afford adequate period protection. So what Always has done is stepped up to be able to donate 100 million pads through Global Citizen and through that platform to be able to end period poverty. There's no reason that a girl should miss school. When she misses school, she misses out on education. She ends up getting married earlier than she wants to, and the economic poverty continues. So that's why we do this. That's why businesses should do this. Businesses can be the greatest force for good in the world. That's why it's time to join Global Go Live to make a difference.
Mark, what you talk about is the importance of really bringing together diverse stakeholders who may not have worked together a decade ago, but to be able to drive meaningful change, you have to have those partnerships. Eddie, I'm going to turn to you. For those of you who don't know his story, it's extraordinary. He was diagnosed with a spinal muscular atrophy at age 2, given only a few years to live. Fast forward several decades, he's defied the odds, broken barriers, and been a first in many ways, but most importantly, he's using his voice and platform to be an incredible force for good. Eddie, Mark talked about the power of business at a really extraordinary scale, 5 billion people that the company touches. You're an example of the way in which you've leveraged your personal story and your personal power, really create a global platform. Talk a little bit about the role of the individual and how it connects back to these larger stakeholders.
Right. So I think at the end of the day, behind every ghastly statistic, I am here, a person with a physical disability, but I am deeply aware of the fact that 90% of children with disabilities across the developing world have never seen the inside of a classroom. 90%. And it is important for us to recognize that behind these statistics are real human beings with aspirations, with hopes, with fears, with anxieties. And I think the power of personal narrative allows us to illuminate and affirm and validate the lived experiences of our fellow human beings. So it's really important that we amplify the voices of people that are marginalized, people that are at greater risk of being left behind, so that when we say that we leave nobody behind for the SDGs, that we're able to give credence to that in a really tangible sense.
All of you are touching different communities, underrepresented communities, or issues that are critical to solving for these goals, but don't necessarily get the attention, the funding, the policy focus on some of the most basic things that are critical to closing these gaps. And I'll turn it over to you. Over 4 billion people do not have access to safely managed sanitation services. This obviously impacts health, social, educational, environmental development, and the like. And even things such as improper or dangerous menstrual hygiene management is a really, Mark, you touched a really critical issue that's a part of that. Talk a little bit about how you all are trying to address those barriers and why something like that at such a local individual level has been so profound in being able to ladder up to these bigger issues.
Lagging behind, doesn't have the resources. And people have forgotten this, but actually when you look at the numbers, as you just said, 4.2 people, 4 billion people in the world lack sanitation services. Out of those, 2.2 do not have even basic sanitation services. It's a major issue because sanitation is not in isolation, and sanitation has a major impact on health. If we speak about health, if we speak about control of outbreak diseases, then we have to really tackle the issue of sanitation. ODA money is not going to sanitation as much. And I think in the council right now, we're trying to transform the work of the Water and Sanitation Collaborative Council to make sure that we take sanitation out of isolation and show direct linkages to health, to women empowerment, because if you speak about menstrual health hygiene and the taboo around it, the stigma, and how adolescent girls are actually prevented from going to schools. According to UNESCO study, 100 million adolescent girls are out of school. While the reasons may be many, but definitely menstruation is one of them, which means that we're not even giving them a start. First of all, to be responsible for their own decisions. We're impacting their sexual and reproductive health. We're impacting their whole outlook to life and the way they view themselves in a dignified manner. We're preventing that right to women to actually live in a safe environment with dignity. So WSCC is really trying to transform itself in making sure that we widen our partnership. We're very grateful to Global Citizen for making sure that actually our cause is part of their mission in this campaign. We want to make sure that we transform WSCC into a financing agency that link and contribute to the well-being of people across the world.
And you talk about the challenge when you do have these stigmas and the challenge of being able to really solve for these critical issues as it relates to young women and girls. Mark, I want to turn to you because you've talked a lot about the reason that bias and stigmas exist, or one of the reasons why we don't have equality is because of these types of bias and stigmas. And oftentimes the way that people are characterized or that conversations within the larger cultural narrative are framed really can reinforce or prevent these from coming to life. In 2017, you all launched the We See Equal campaign to promote gender equality in advertising and media because again, it's so critical to be able to tap into and reframe the cultural zeitgeist. Talk a little bit about that campaign, but also with so many business stakeholders in the room, also the ways in which business leaders can think differently about the power they have in their own organizations to be able to activate that type of change at scale.
If you think about it, advertising and the content and the media on which we advertise touches everybody on the planet. And the images and portrayals of people in that advertising and in that content have an effect on bias. Because how you portray people and what you talk about and how you talk about them actually embed memories into your brain that forms bias. So what we've chosen to do is to use our voice in advertising to ensure, just fundamentally, we have the accurate portrayal of women and girls in advertising media, and actually of every human, whether it be race, ethnicity, sexual or gender identity, ability, religion, age, whatever the case may be, because the accurate portrayal of humanity will make a difference in terms of how people will see the world. That's point one. Point two is periodically take a stand. Always literally change the meaning of like a girl. So there's other things we can do. We have a campaign to end period poverty is another campaign. Taking on those stigmas about menstruation, because there's absolutely no reason there should be any kind of a stigma, and our voices can make a difference in that. And then also other education programs. So by doing that, that can allow everybody who has a voice, whether you advertise, whether you buy media, whether you have PR, you can make a difference through how you are portraying people and the stance that you take. And that's something that we're choosing to do in our sector, is to get and join companies together to focus on seeing equal so we can get to equal, and then also use our voice behind the camera to make sure that we also get the right people producing things. Only 11% of production is by women. Last I checked, women are half the population. They should be able to be behind the camera as well. That's another area that will also add to economic empowerment.
You talk so much about the fact that you need to empower all voices and all stakeholders to take a stand, whether it be the business, whether it be the companies that you work with, or the consumers that you touch, because that's only when you can really translate something powerful into action. Eddie, you've talked a lot about the challenges of stigmas and those kinds of barriers, and the role of an individual in reshaping a narrative and activating change.